Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trin. The one show, the only show that shows you the path to a healthier life, one conversation at a time. And today, have we got a conversation? Put on your thinking caps, because I'm not sure. We're going to go into the healthcare medical metaverse. We're going to go into the another world that sort of ties in with what MD Dow is doing. We're going to try and see if we can understand it any more than we can understand what MD Dow is doing. Let's bring on our host to explain it all for us and lay it out simply. Dr. Trin, welcome.
Thanks, Pa. And welcome, guys. Hello, Elizabeth. And is it Hugo?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Yes. Co-founders of HEKA Creative Labs, and that's an interesting name. And their mission is to address mental health, I believe, right? In the metaverse or on the virtual world.
Absolutely.
So you have to tell us where the name comes from. Where does HEKA come from here?
Well, it's not going to sound so interesting in a second once we tell you what it is, but I'll let Elizabeth go ahead and explain that.
Okay.
It's interesting. So I'm awful at naming anything. And I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I'll just make a name out of our initials. So Hugo, Elizabeth, and our third co-founder is Kate, whose initials start with KA. And I said, well, we are HEKA Creatives, so why not? But oddly enough, we actually just found out that HEKA is the god of medicine and wellness. See? So it actually works out.
Wow, a little synchronicity going on here. A little
hidden
forces.
That's HEKA cool.
So give us the thumbnail sketch. Give us the elevator pitch. What the heck is it you've created? And then Dr. Trin and I will ask you more about it here. What is it you've done?
So basically, we are actually all students in the Web3 space. I'm getting my master's. Hugo is actually getting certified in blockchain programming. And we thought, let's create something with the knowledge that we're gaining that could do something positive in the world. And we thought about, when you think about therapy today, so you think of Alcoholics Anonymous, Addicts Anonymous, or even just thinking about counseling today, none of it is anonymous whatsoever. And there really isn't a community around receiving group therapy. So you go, you see your session, and after that session's done, you don't see people again for another week to 2 weeks, right? And there is no community around that. And if you're not fully comfortable talking about your mental health in a public setting, you don't necessarily get the full benefit of even being in that therapy because you hold back some of the actual issues that you're actually dealing with, right? And we just kind of thought like, well, blockchain technology and the metaverse is something that can offer that layer of anonymity on top of delivering sort of a next level version of telehealth mental health services, right? And we just thought, this is a direction we should go with the knowledge we're receiving in school, where we can create a place where people can have a community. The community is free 24 hours a day, where they can pop in and out, meet people, talk to people, have friends, and constantly be able to, talk to people about their issues. But at the same time, when they do sit in these group therapy sessions, they can choose to be anonymous. Therefore, they can be a little bit more open, even thinking, government officials, celebrities, so on and so forth. They can't do peer therapy because the minute they do, they're outed and they're all over front page news. Right. And this can give them that.
So is Dr. Trin, is that one of the barriers to seeking mental health? Not just sort of the shame, I've failed, I've something here, but to come forward, to come out, to go somewhere and stand in front of a group and say, I am an alcoholic or I have a problem. Is that part of the problem? Maybe that's part of the healing to be able to admit it and come forward, but it's also probably one of the barriers to taking that first step.
Absolutely. There is a stigma tied to mental health issues today, whether you're depressed or anxious or bipolar, whatever it is. There's this perception that if you had, depression or anxiety, that you're weak in some way, right? And that stigma is doesn't allow people to get the help they need. And especially if you're in front of, of your therapist, maybe in front of your therapist, but that isn't enough, because mental health is community health. The health of community that can support you is part of the mental health healing process. Except if you are part of a community, you have to really unmask and identify, and with, and show your vulnerabilities in person, and that is a barrier compared to maybe if we can still allow community involvement and allow the opportunity for folks to not necessarily show who they are.
Why in today's modern world, where, as they love to say, we're awake, we've woken up to so many past problems here, and we're willing to admit our failings and our faults, and we're willing to look at all sorts of different people from all sorts of different background, desires, whatever, we're willing to be so open about so many things. Why are we still so closed? I'll throw this to the Metaverse couple here. Why are we so closed to discussions about mental health for ourselves, for our family, for our friends? Why is that still such a taboo topic? Why do we still shun that and not want to discuss mental health issues?
I think it's a lack of information. For me personally, when I had my bouts with mental health, I didn't know as many, people around the world, but in my head at the time, I didn't know as many Americans were going through what they were going through like I was. I thought I was different. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was, weird, like people would think you'd be. I said, man, what is wrong with me? So I kept myself from sharing it with friends. And I think for me, the worst thing I could have done was keep that bottled in, because that made me more anxious. Right now I'm trying to hide something, and you know how difficult it can be to hide something, even something that's not anxiety. You could, holding a secret or something that is hard. Imagine panicking and going through it, thinking potentially I'm going to have a heart attack or I don't know what's going on, and trying to hide that in front of a room of people. It's one of the worst feelings you could ever imagine. I don't know if anyone has gone through it, but
I'm going to sympathize. I'm going to out myself. I had a terrible issue with depression years ago that just almost immobilized me. And it really was centered around anxiety, and I started getting panic attacks. I couldn't go places. I couldn't do things. That panic that grips you, and you say to yourself, there's nothing wrong. Why do I feel like I'm dying? Why do I feel like I'm trapped? I got to get out. All this stuff here. Horrible, horrible experience.
It is absolutely terrifying.
And nobody, my friends, my family, my parents, really wanted to talk about it or knew how to talk about it. And so you find yourself suffering alone. You finally go seek help, and somebody says, you're not alone. There's medication. There's meditation. Let's get to the root cause. Why are you doing You're doing it to yourself. That's the hardest thing to accept. It's either because of a chemical imbalance or because of some issues going on, and you're just making yourself crazy here. And that makes you even more depressed. Why am I doing this to myself? Why is this happening to me?
Exactly.
And it was only by talking about it that I began to whether to a therapist, to anybody and everybody. I'm talking about it now. It's like you've got to come out, and like any of these issues, maybe it is sort of like alcohol addiction or other sorts of things. You've got to admit it. You got to talk about it. And the minute you do, the bugaboo is gone, and go, oh, okay, I had that, or I know somebody has that. It's the stigma disappears the minute you talk about it.
Exactly.
So anything that stimulates conversation, like a healthcare metaverse, has got to be good for more people. Anything that gets people talking about it, I'm all for it.
Yeah, we agree. And the thing that we love about what we're building is that we're trying to make it accessible. I think another thing that people constantly think about when we talk about metaverse is they're like, yeah, but I can't afford a pair of $300 Oculus goggles, right? And they're getting more expensive. they're not getting cheaper. And, some people can't even afford a laptop or a desktop computer. So what we've done is we've actually partnered with a company called Yep Nation, where they're actually creating a metaverse for us where you don't need goggles to interact with our metaverse.
Wow.
And you don't need a computer. You can do it right from your cell phone. So even if you don't have internet, you just have data on your phone, you can use it as well. We recently went to New Orleans, and just thinking about being on the flight, like, had I not had him there and I was just there by myself, knowing I'm going to speak at a conference, I could have easily gone over the board where I start having anxiety, where I'm uncomfortable, nervous, and by myself. And I don't know anybody on this flight. If I had access to this metaverse, I could sign on to the flight Wi-Fi, jump right in, and start talking about what I'm going through. I'm on this flight alone. I'm about to speak at a big conference. Anybody else have any coping mechanisms that they can help me with while I'm here?
Right.
And again, it's that community that you're building, that 24 hours of being able to reach out to somebody just to sort of calm you down from that moment until you receive your next therapy session.
So here's my question for both of you. Dr. Trin is working on a medical metaverse. You guys are working on a mental health metaverse. And we keep trying to struggle with, what does this thing look like? For those of us who don't go into virtual worlds very often, don't play video games, or don't immerse ourselves in Second Life or some other strange environment. What does it look like? And does it have to be totally different than real life? Meaning, can I just be communicating like texting and Zoom calls and whatnot? It's just a way, another collaboration communication tool. Or does it have to take on a virtual aspect, avatars? I have to have a second skin. I have to be dressed as a dragon. I have to have superpowers and fly through space. I have to have special goggles to navigate and look around and do all this stuff. Does it have to be that virtual, or can it just be a bigger collaboration platform? I'll start with Dr. Trin. What do you think when you think of medical metaverse?
Yeah, the term metaverse is a term that kind of scares all of us.
Yeah.
But really, metaverse is an opportunity of taking what you can do in person, physically in front of another person, and bringing that same experience as much as you can onto a virtual world where we are no longer, restricted by physical location and distance. So let me give you a really simple example of, so we've all gone shopping in the mall before, South Coast Plaza down here,
right,
or up in LA, there are shopping malls, right? You walk into a shopping mall, you physically go around, look at all the shops and things of that sort. Well, the metaverse for a shopping mall already exists. It's Metaverse 1.0. It's called Amazon.
Right.
Right?
And you're just
Amazon
looking at products and pages, as opposed to a physical building or any movement where you walk in.
You get the same experience, same experience, but now your shopping mall is virtual, right? If I can call that Metaverse 1.0, that's all it is. You're replacing going into a mall with a virtual mall called Amazon. That's 1.0. But that's been around forever.
Right.
We're looking now at the next, iteration of this.
But do you have to fit? I guess what I'm saying is, my little grandson plays Roblox, and he loves Roblox, and it's a virtual world, and he loves to dress up. He has wings in this world and a little virtual pet, because his parents won't get him a real one. It's a little parrot that flies over his head and follows him around, and he meets people, and he builds these strange labyrinths that don't go anywhere, but he loves to see what goes up and down and over, and he invites other people to play in it. And it's a giant sandbox, but he doesn't come in as himself. The appeal of the metaverse to him is to be somebody else, to be more. He can fly, he can have a pet, he can do other things that he can't in the real world. Does it have to have that fantastic element to it to be a metaverse, or can it simply be Amazon, where we all gather and collaborate, and maybe it's with virtual Zoom calls, maybe it's with telemedicine, maybe it's do I have to have a strange avatar? Do I have to have superpowers to be in a metaverse? What do you guys think, Elizabeth and company?
Absolutely not. We that's one of the things we want to welcome people to be themselves. If you want to remain anonymous, that's fine. us personally will be there as ourselves and introduce ourselves as Hugh and Elizabeth. And we're going to be there to walk around. You know, if we see somebody walking around through the metaverse, we want to be able to talk to them like, hey, are you looking for something in particular? Are you looking for self-help videos, you know, yoga libraries? Are you looking for group therapy? So, you know, it's going to be completely up to the individual. But what we are creating, and to your point earlier, right? It's all about kind of misinformation. And I think that community is going to, when you step in there and you're going to see, wow, look, there's 300 people in this space, 400 people, 500 people walking around. It isn't just me. And that automatically brings a sense of calm, right? It's not just me. These people are here for similar reasons. And so, you know, you absolutely don't have to dress up, but we will have, what do you think? We're going to create like different outfits and that you can change it up and make it
so many
fun.
of these metaverses are about that. They're about fantasy. So I can be a duck. I can walk around and fly. I can do other sorts of things. And I guess that's appealing to people on a certain level to act out and imagine we're all superheroes or something. But if I'm trying to really do commerce, if I'm trying to really get calm, I don't know that I need to be dressed up as a wizard.
I think to your point, one of the things that we are definitely trying to focus on is not create a place of escapism. So you won't be able to fly in our metaverse. And while we will have a build your own avatar system, they will be human avatars, right? I mean, you can choose whatever face you want in that avatar, but we want to make sure that people still feel of this place as, we don't want you to disconnect so far from reality that you're not really receiving the therapy you're receiving, right? We will gamify the system, but, you know, they're going to be real buildings. You know, it's not, we're using a product called Unreal Engine. So it looks a little bit more realistic versus like a Roblox, right? Where it looks sort of more gamey.
Right.
And we just want to make sure that, you know, when people utilize our service, that they understand that, like, you know, this isn't a game. This is something that is important. And therefore, we don't want you to come to escape from life, but use it as an additional tool to help you through life.
Right. I think that's interesting. You know, somebody described, you quickly said in the beginning, this is Web 3.0. I've heard it described as that. And see if this rings true. Somebody told me that Web 1.0, the first version of the internet, was just connecting people to information. It was a giant library. It was the yellow pages, and you went to find something, a piece of information where the doctor was, a map to get somewhere. It was just you connecting to lists of information. Web 2.0 was the attempt to build communities, social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and stuff, where you're connecting people to people, not just people to information. Now Web 3.0 seems to be creating experiences where you don't just go in and go out. You put your picture up on Facebook and you look at somebody else's and you leave, where you share some sort of experience. You're in a group therapy. You're in a group concert. You're in a group space. You're walking around, but somehow you're all experiencing, and maybe it's enhanced by goggles and other virtual fantasy elements to it, but somehow you're sharing something together that creates more of a connection and more of a community other than, hi, how are you? I'm fine. Here's a picture of me. Is that a fair appraisal, Dr. Trin? Is that a good way to understand Web 3.0, where the whole internet's going?
Yeah, it's immersion of who you are and that opportunity to
a shared experience somehow. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yes.
We're doing
Absolutely.
something
It's
together.
about building communities.
Yeah. We're not just getting in and getting out. Right.
The community setting itself is therapeutic. If you can identify with a community who knows how you feel, if you're depressed, anxious, and just being there, reading, listening to others, you learn a lot from that. You know, what's interesting for me is that during the years that I took care of patients as a primary care physician, right, in the world of internal medicine, we deal with chronic health conditions, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, conditions that there are absolutely no cure, right? You just have diabetes, you have diabetes, you have it for long term, or hypertension, or whatever it is, right? High cholesterol. These are all chronically long-term conditions. So I know that when patients come to see us to kind of titrate up their dosage here, lower their dosage here, and things of that sort, what the most value a patient, or many of my patients, get is during the minutes that they're just chatting with me. I haven't cured their diabetes, their hypertension, their high cholesterol. I haven't cured their heart disease, but oftentimes they, at the end of the visit, they get up and they say, "Thank you, I feel much better."
Yeah.
And it's like, what exactly did I do for you? I didn't cure any of your diseases that you came in.
Right.
And folks often feel much better because, believe it or not, I listened and they were heard.
Yes.
And in a community, you get to hopefully create a environment where folks can be heard, because being heard is therapeutic, right? Just like water is required for life, for physical life, being heard is required for emotional life.
No question about it. And then hearing something back. You get comfort from others. You get comfort from conversation. That's what we're doing here. So still trying to picture this. I don't want to go too deep into this here, but what does it look like? What does it feel like when I walk through? Because you can connect people through Zoom. You can connect people with no environment whatsoever, just seeing their faces. You can connect them, as we've done for years, through text and just typing and putting pictures like that. Why do I have to physically have an avatar? Why do I have to physically navigate and move through the space? One. And number two, if it's supposed to be calming, helpful, what does that space look like? Does it have a certain color, a certain sound, a certain something that I go into it? You know, I listen to sleep sounds, calming ocean waves to get me to go to sleep. Does it have calming sounds? Does it have calming colors? Or does it look totally strange like Roblox and very otherworldly? We'll talk about that, Hugo. What's your vision for how it looks?
Yeah, so if you're imagining a Zoom call with 12 individuals on there, right? And you want to speak to one, think of yourself, everyone's chatting back and forth. Now you want to talk to Dr. Trin, who's on the top of that, right? Now, are you just going to interrupt everyone and just start talking to Dr. Trin? You feel maybe that might be kind of weird, right? So picture yourself navigating through the metaverse. You're able to navigate exactly where you want to go. Do you want to relax by the water fountain? Do you want to relax in like the jazzy cafe? Do you want to go into like a library setting and relax? And I think it'll be more comfortable to approach someone's avatar as yourself. You walk up to them. They already know that you want to introduce yourself or maybe speak to them, right? So I think it's a little more inviting than just interrupting everyone to get to talk to one individual or talk to one group.
It's more of an extension of, sitting in a room full of people, right? When you're sitting in a room full of people, like you can see that somebody has raised their hand, Dr. Trin can directly ask that person questions, and, you can visually look around. And so you get a full 360 view. It's almost like, you can actually so without having goggles, you can actually set the view to be first person. And so when you're in first person, it's like you're looking through your avatar's eyes. So you can look around the room, you can see the people that are sitting around you, you can see that somebody's currently speaking, you can hear that they're speaking, you can see somebody else has raised their hand because they want to speak next. And then also some things that we're adding is that, like, if you look in a direction and there's a water fountain, you can hear the water feature from that water fountain. If you're standing in the room where the jazz player is playing jazz, you will hear that jazz player playing jazz. And so those are the kinds of elements we want to include. We're going to have, nice garden for people to be able to walk around. We're going to have nice lounges where people can sit and just kind of hang out. There'll be a little cafe area, even like a smoothie bar where people can sit and hang out at the smoothie bar. And then, we have some gated rooms that are password protected that once you sign up with a particular therapist, they'll give you that password and you go into that room. And some elements we're trying to put in those rooms are things like, let's put some tufted seating on the floor. So you're not necessarily sitting on those like foldable chairs. Like, we can design it to look like however we want. And the benefit of that too is that you're not required a brick and mortar, which is, as a therapist, that's overhead that you have to carry. You don't have to worry about design elements, right? We're creating the design elements virtually for you. So you don't have to worry about whether or not that space feels calming and looks calming, because we're going to virtually make that calming for you.
Now, I find that interesting, and I'm just going to explore that for 1 second. You're going to put tufted, cushy seats rather than hard folding chairs. But I can't feel anything in this universe, so I'm having to translate, in the real world, I know what that feels like, so I want to sit in that virtual version of it, even though it does nothing to my little avatar. My little avatar and me can't experience anything yet in that virtual world, except I'm putting myself in a mental space. Oh, yeah, when I sit in a comfy chair, I'm relaxed. When I sit on a hard surface, I'm not. So talk about that, Dr. Trim. What do you guys envision? I wonder if you've all thought about how this looks and feels, or is it just about how it functions? It connects people.
So, Paul, one day you're going to be wearing a wetsuit.
A wetsuit, okay.
Yeah, and that wetsuit is going to have little pads on it that tells you in 3D what's going on. And
it's sending me stimulation. I'm tilted.
Maybe it'll send you stimulation,
I'm
Paul.
cold,
when
I'm
you
hot.
sit
Yeah.
when you sit on that metaverse couch, you'll feel it because your butt would be stimulated with a warm, cushy couch on that wetsuit.
Yeah. Is that? I wonder if that's important to get an experience, that you have to engage more senses than just your sight and your hearing. I got to somehow smell it. I got to somehow feel it. I got to somehow experience it and take it in with more senses. What do you guys think? Do we have to get more sensory in this thing here?
I mean, I think eventually. I don't know that it's that important in the beginning. I mean, think of the game Sims. People love the game. I mean, how many versions of the Sims exist? And, all it is you're just designing rooms just to hang out in all day, but there's something about that sort of visual element to seeing something visually pleasing to you that does something to the body that says, yeah, no, this is a calming space that I'm sitting in and I like it. And it's, aesthetically pleasing to me visually, that physically I feel it as well.
Because one of the complaints that I've read a lot of, and I think I've experienced, is we're all in Zoom. We're all standing, looking straight forward, not even really at each other. Just we're trying to sort of gaze to the side when somebody, whatever side you're on my screen here. But we're all just, when we're not talking, we're just unnaturally, like we're on a panel, just staring ahead and feeling awkward while somebody else over here is chatting away. And so we try and decorate. I've got a little car behind me. Dr. Trin doesn't bother. He just shows an empty ceiling. You guys have got some hip stuff on the wall. We either say, I don't care, or we try and adapt this space to us and make it more visually interesting. Is all that visual stimulation part of mental health? Would that help the process if it was looked right and felt right?
I think it depends on the individual, right? We want you to be yourself. We want you to be happy. So I think it absolutely depends on the individual. It's not necessary, but maybe it does put someone in a calming position, right? And like what you said earlier, I think if let's say you walk into a coffee shop that you've never been in, right? You think you have to think more than you do, but you really don't. You walk in and there's cushions on this side and there's cement pillars on this side. Your brain automatically, as soon as you get your coffee, you automatically go to the left. Right. You're not even thinking about that side. Your brain kind of guides you there. It knows what's comforting. So
because somebody designed it though to do that. They thought through how do they want the room to flow. We don't want you to go here. We want you to, without thinking, to be drawn over here and to sit down and to gather. And I built bars many years ago. We spent tons of time trying to figure out when somebody walks in, what's the first thing they want to do? What's the next thing they want to do? Without thinking. Yeah. And those that don't, then you immediately freeze. Because do I go here? Do I go here? I'm overwhelmed. I see this, and I don't know what to do, and I freeze. So there's a lot about that subtle pathway that you create that attracts people through it. But I guess I think that's one of the things that intimidates me about the metaverse is I don't want it to look like Roblox. I don't want to have wings. I don't want to be so fantasy and foreign that I don't feel real there. And yet, I guess that's part of the appeal is you can be really anything you want to be. Like on Zoom, I have to put a little background here because I want to somehow personalize it and make it more me. So
Yeah, I think we definitely have been thinking a lot about that. I mean, we even, even in common spaces, we're making seating that makes it so that you automatically sit in a group, right? We're making it so that people can't just sit off on their own unless, when they see a bench, they can sit on that bench by themselves. But, we want to constantly create an opportunity for you to sit with groups of people and have that sort of feel. But, like you said, we don't also like the idea of making things that are too fanciful, right? Which is why we're not making it that Roblox feel and the flying feel and all of that.
That's not why people will join the space,
Right.
Maybe they have that as once they feel relaxed and come into our space and get some group therapy or one-on-one. Now they feel relaxed. Now they can go into another metaverse and play video games and do whatever else they're going to do in their fantasy land.
Yeah. And we're also making it so that if at any point you decide you want to reveal who you are, you can update your avatar, make it your real face, update, the name that you're using and make it yours as well. We just want to make sure that if you're not comfortable, you can start off as being as anonymous as you need to be.
Yeah.
Well, as was very clear, you were all speaking at the Next Practices Metaverse conference here at UCI's Beal Applied Innovation Center. Dr. Trim was speaking. You guys were not speaking, but you were there in attendance. And that's where I got to meet you as I was covering the event for OC Talk Radio. And everybody, the one thing that struck me is maybe it's just because you're all true believers, but everybody in that room truly believes this is not just coming. It's here. It's inevitable. Whether I'm comfortable in the space or whether I'm still a Luddite and worried about technology and change, get over it because it's coming. This Facebook didn't change its name to Meta just for fun. They and others truly believe that this Web 3.0 with enhanced experience, with enhanced virtual spaces that you will literally sit down in. I don't know why I have to sit in the metaverse, but I have to sit somehow. I'm not tired. I can stand forever in the metaverse here, but somehow I have to sit in the metaverse. And it has to be comfortable in the metaverse because it has to mirror at some point my real life experience to make me feel comfortable and at ease.
So where are you guys in your roadmap of creating this mental health metaverse world?
We actually will receive a link to our demo version in probably about a week and a half. And once we receive the link to that demo version, we can already go ahead and start populating it with a community of users as well as a community of therapists. And then what we want to do with that initial demo version is we want to get feedback, right? I mean, we built this with what we thought would work, but we don't know what works until people actually use it. So in that first version, we want the therapists to come back and say, this is what worked and what didn't work. We want the users to come back and say, here's what would make this a better experience for me. And then we're going to use that to roll out a bigger, better version 2 of our metaverse.
What does it feel like to create your own world? It seems a little godlike. I am going to take a blank slate, and I on the first day I create the sun and the earth and the moon, and on the 7th day I create man, and it's a little biblical here to me. What's that feel like?
I'll tell you what motivates me. When we started creating this, I wouldn't say the only person, but my main focus was my son. So think about our sons, our nieces, our nephews. What would I like him to be able to access? What would I like? I would never want him to go through what I went through. So I put myself in issues now that the next generation, they've grown up on video games, right? This is natural to them. To us, it's overwhelming. To them, it's natural. So when I create this, I've found a lot of healing through reading and the way I was brought up, reading and maybe doing some research and now talking to people. But now I'm thinking about the next generation. What do they like to do? Because now the most important person in my life is my son.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the future and what we can create for them and how we can make this easier for them and more of a community feel. So that's my motivation.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, it does feel surreal that we're doing this. I mean, it was never our intention, I think, to even start a business, let alone to go down this path. I mean, originally it was like, let's go to school, let's learn about this thing, and what can we do in this space that's impactful. And then all of a sudden it just started to grow inside us to really do something that we believe could actually really help people, to the point where now we're like, this is really happening, and this is surreal, and we are close, extremely close, to being able to allow people to immediately start getting some services, and really, giving us some feedback and letting us know like how we can make it better for them, and really sort of do something that's impactful to the world, I think.
Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to add on that. It's like, when you go to the doctor, when you make a doctor's appointment, right? Because you're getting headaches more often than you typically do, or your leg hurts, right? You make an appointment, Dr. Trin's available 3 weeks from now. You show up to see Dr. Trin, nothing hurts. You feel like $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So we want to create that community where, yeah, you don't want to wait. You're going through what you're going through now. You don't want to wait a week to speak to your therapist. You want to go in or to our metaverse and get some, instant relief from at least a group therapy, right? Until you can make a session with your actual therapist. But we want that instant, help, right?
Yeah, instant gratification.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of discussion that surprised me at the conference when questions opened up. Maybe it's because it's a university setting and this is a popular theme in academia today, but there was a lot about equity and fairness and access. And on one level, they were sort of critical of all you guys because you're elitists. You're assuming we all have technology, we all have internet, we're all able to go into this space. And the pushback was, well, there's an awful lot of people, even if it's on your phone. Somebody told me a statistic once that I found startling. I don't know if it's true or not, that more people in the world, in the third world, have access to a smartphone than they do clean water. It is pretty ubiquitous, much more than we think. It isn't an elitist thing that I got internet and you don't. I know how to use technology and you don't. Technology's become so democratized and so embedded in from the poorest to the richest parts of our world. And so the pushback that you guys made, or not you, but people on the panel said, all right, you're saying that it's access only to those with technology and internet. I'm arguing that's everybody today. And then the reverse is this allows people who have no access, because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I have no hospitals. I have no doctors. I don't live in the best zip codes with the best psychiatrists and psychologists. I don't have access to the big universities and hospitals and stuff because I can't afford to go there. So in that sense, it is equitable. It is accessible. Talk about that, Dr. Trin. How do you guys vision? Then they can answer as well. Is this only for the few, or is this open more services for the many?
So when you think of the word access, right, and the problems we have with access today, access is often defined, not only can you afford this, but access is defined by how far you're able to drive to get to your therapy or to your treatment. Access is limited by geography and location.
Right.
That completely goes away on the metaverse. The walls of geography and location barrier completely goes away.
And the barrier of having to get a car and go there. Maybe I can't drive. Maybe I'm immobilized. Maybe I'm disabled. Maybe I'm elderly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that problem gets solved once you go in the virtual world and there's no walls around you. There's no barriers from city to city, state to state, or internationally. So access is solved when you go virtually. The issue of equity is tied to access because, again, that's tied to location. As you mentioned, there are zip codes that fall in the, in very rich areas, and there are zip codes where you're barely making it. That's geographic as well, believe it or not. And most of the well-known doctors around the world are usually at, high tower academic centers where people have access to, compared to
good zip codes. They're not in the bad zip codes, right?
Exactly.
Poor zip codes.
That goes away, and so yeah, that helps with equity when you're able to take this virtually in the virtual world, and you're not stuck to the equity limitations of your zip code or where you live or the minority areas that you're a part of. And so I see a lot of potential solutions with bringing all this virtually.
Hugo and Elizabeth, how do you answer that? Some people say, hey, you're only elitists going after the tech savvy and the people with access, and maybe it's young people who understand this, and us older people, we're left out because we're clueless in this world here. How do you answer those kinds of questions? Or is it bringing more to many?
I think it's bringing more to many. I think during the pandemic, more people were able to access mental health services than before the pandemic because of the fact that everything went telehealth. Services that were typically in person only, for example, therapy was one that was highly only accessed in person, became, I think it was something about a 500% increase. And again, it's about location, right? They couldn't access it before because of location, but now you bring it onto the internet. Now they can access it. On top of that, that's why we're creating it so that you don't have to use VR, because not everybody can afford VR glasses.
Right.
We're also making it so that you can use it on your cell phone, because to your point, there are more people in the world today that have access to a smartphone than clean water. Right. And you don't necessarily need internet. You can actually just use, if you have data on your phone, or if there is free Wi-Fi somewhere, which a lot of places have that these days, you can. I mean, even just recently, there was a story in, I want to say, somewhere in Africa where there was no internet whatsoever, but the guy was able to use his cell phone using crypto and buy groceries. Yeah. Right. So these things are ever evolving, and that's what blockchain technology is sort of doing. It's making things equitable and making things available and giving people more access. So in my opinion, it's for the many. It's not for the few.
Okay. And why has blockchain always come up in this discussion? What the hell is blockchain? This open ledger that has it's unhackable, I guess, at least in today's world. And it has a transparency to it that's appealing to many, that you can track stuff and see stuff and whatnot. What the heck does this have to do with the metaverse? Other than a means of exchange, maybe in the metaverse, a currency for the metaverse, but you all say it's a foundational idea underlying. Is it just the engine under the hood somehow here?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how your metaverse is built. So our particular metaverse, we're not building it on chain, we're building it off chain, which means we're not building it on the blockchain. And we're doing that specifically so that, one, it's fast and easy to use, and two, we're not like, we're trying to make it so that it's even more accessible on cell phones and stuff. And because of technology on a lot of cell phones, it's really not there. It'd be almost setting us back if we immediately go ahead and put it on the blockchain. On top of that, a lot like, for example, Decentraland and Sandbox, when they use blockchain technology, it's just used alongside of the metaverse to do things like track data. So to access our metaverse, you will have to make a profile. That profile will use your, we'll use the word wallet. I don't have to get too far into it, but basically you use a wallet, which a wallet is basically your personal profile, where you hold the data to who you are. And you get to decide whether or not you want to give me information about who you are. The only thing that you're presenting to me is that you are a real person and you signed in using this wallet, and the only public information I receive about you is whatever public information your wallet has given me, which anybody can see as long as you have a wallet. And all that does is it basically make sure that if you buy something on our metaverse, like a new outfit or whatever, you can hold it in your wallet and that data is tracked. And then if you want to sell that outfit to somebody else, because maybe you're the only person that bought that outfit, you can do that, and it tracks the sale like a digital ledger.
So is that the key aspect of blockchain, Dr. Trin, data? Because that was a big discussion. It lost me. You guys went down the rabbit hole when you spent all of you talking 20 minutes about who owns the data. In Web 2.0, social media world, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they own the data. They give you access for free, and they do it we've now discovered, because they want your data. It's more valuable than anything to sell to others. What you're doing, what you're buying, who you are, everything about you is invaluable to companies trying to target you and find you. So that data for Google, that data for Facebook is everything. And now we're getting upset because we're realizing that, oh, they tricked us. They gave us this fun place for free. It wasn't free after all. I'm giving them something that I didn't have I didn't see any value to it. Take my data. I don't care if you track what I'm buying and what I'm doing. Now we're saying maybe, like one of your panelists on your talk said, maybe if I owned my data, I could afford to pay for lots of things here. I'm giving away something that I didn't see any value in. Maybe if I teach people how to collect my data and sell my own data and use my own data differently, this will open up a whole new source of wealth and income for me here. Talk about that, Dr. Trin.
Absolutely. When something is free and you're wondering, what the product actually is, right? Yeah, you are the product, right? When something's free and you're wondering what the product is, you're actually the product, right? You're Facebook's product. When we're on Facebook Live or YouTube or Twitter or whatever it is, right? You're the product, and there's a central organization that owns you, that owns that data that you express when
that
you're
wallet,
chatting
that profile,
with people,
everything about you.
That profile.
Yeah,
that's right. So the idea of decentralizing, data is that in this wallet that you have, that data becomes yours, and that data does not belong to a centralized organization like Facebook or Twitter or social media and stuff like that.
To manipulate you, to target you, as we found out they did in several of the past elections in Facebook. People bought ads and robots and targeted us and inflamed us and misinformed us and everything else. It was all an algorithm based on the data that we had given them and that they had compiled, and they carefully analyzed it and used it to manipulate us.
Yeah.
And we were horrified that they could do this. And now we're putting up privacy laws. California just passed a harder version of the California Privacy Act. In Europe, whatever it is, GP something, whatever. GDPR. They've got much more restrictions on a website that collects data, a app that collects data, what you can do with that data. You have to disclose you're collecting it. You have to have policies to pull out of it and other sorts of things. But we still haven't really wrapped our head around the importance of this data. And it seems like you guys are looking ahead. Is that what you're doing in your platform? Is that why you say you're not on the chain? Is that an argument to be on the chain? The data is easier to compile and compartmentalize and separate, and transparency and all that? Is that why people are so enthralled with blockchain? I'll go back to Elizabeth and Hugo here.
Yeah, I think a lot, it has, anonymity along with the technology to have a ledger for everything, right? So let's say us four here, let's say we're going to do transactions, right? So you have Paul, Dr. Trin, Hugo, Elizabeth. Paul sold this wallet to Hugo. Hugo then sold it to Elizabeth. It's all there. Now, if we had numbers and no one knew what our numbers were, then it would be 1 sold to 4, 4 traded to 3, So you have all that technology there where everything is on a ledger, but at the same time, no one knows exactly who created those transactions, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the benefit of everything being on a ledger with anonymity as well.
Right. You don't necessarily need to know that, like, Hugo sold me the wallet. It's just more about that transaction. I think for us, we plan on keeping our metaverse off chain, but that's also because we're using a technology called Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine doesn't work well on chain. And it's because it has sort of that more realistic feel that we're looking for, right? I mean, if we're doing something like Roblox, like it's a little more pixelated, something like that can exist on chain, where we want something that looks more realistic and more sort of like we said, a place where it doesn't feel like you can fly and escape from. So we're going to keep that off chain. The aspect that we will add to that will be on chain will be the ability to connect your wallet so that you can do more things. Because aside from being able to dress your avatar, right? Because we do want to gamify it a little bit. We want to be able to do things like incorporate stuff with MD where if you make healthy choices, as an example, we'll have a video library. And if you decide to access those videos from that video library, you may receive tokens from MD And then those tokens will sit inside your wallet, and you can do various things with those tokens, depending on the rules that MD has put forth when it comes to the utilization of their tokens.
So talk about that, Dr. Trin. Your co-founder, your CEO, or whatever he is, Arabian Prince, the rapper from NWA, loves to go on about gamifying. And do I have to trick people into doing good behavior? Do I have to reward them for doing good behavior?
Well, let's put it this way. In the world of healthcare, the doctors get rewarded. The health insurance company obviously gets rewarded. The hospitals get rewarded in certain ways. The one person that never gets rewarded for good health care is the patient. What's wrong with that situation?
Yeah, I mean, the
right?
reward is I'm healthy, so thank you. But there is no. What else you got? You know, I did something good. Give me a little cookie. Well, you guys used to give me suckers when I went in when I was a little kid, so I got some kind of reward.
That sent you to the dentist, our partner.
Yeah, right, exactly. I learned that years later. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that's fascinating to me. This idea that and companies do this a lot. That we've had lots of discussions. This is a business channel. There have been people come on and say there are big level companies that are trying to gamify employee behavior, not just threaten them, not just beg them, but to reward them somehow more than just a trip around the world or luggage or something here. That there's competitions, there's teams, there's other sorts of ways to create game environments here. That people, I wouldn't do it otherwise, but if it's a competition, I'll do it. I wouldn't do it otherwise, but if I can win a little token or a little prize or a little extra bonus rewards, I'll do it. Airlines do it with airline points and have popularized this. We're always collecting airline points. Can I get more airline points and stuff here? I guess that's fascinating to me that somehow it just feels a little manipulative to me, but maybe that's for a good cause. You're the good manipulators. Is that a harsh way to say it here?
Yeah,
it's more of an incentive rather than manipulation.
I was like, I wouldn't call it manipulation, but incentivization, absolutely. I mean, that's just how the world works. I mean, as a child, you were incentivized to do good things. When I'm
a gold star. Right?
Yeah. When I'm training my dog, I incentivize her with chicken in order for her to not do the things I don't want her to do. Right. So, I mean, it's just sort of, human nature, right? We like to do things because there's a transaction involved that benefits me.
It's Pavlov's dog. We respond to positive reinforcement here. We love a cookie.
Yeah.
So you're giving us little cookies here. Well, I think it's amazing. How quick is this coming? Well, is there a medical metaverse nearby? Is there a healthcare metaverse next month? Is this 20 years in the future and I don't have to worry about it?
Well, we're building the mental health version of it, which will be available within the next week and a half, like I said. And then MD will be next with the medical metaverse. So watch out for both of us.
And do these metaverses, here's my last question, do these metaverses exist separate spaces? I got to choose my team. I choose to be in Facebook. That doesn't put me in Twitter. That's a different world, or I'm in some other, political, I'm in some version that only it's like-minded people hang out here. Or is there interconnectivity between these worlds, these interdimensional connections here? I know you're exploring that with MD and your mental health metaverse, but do you see these as standalone silos, or do you see these as interconnected worlds, Dr. Trin?
It used to be where if you have a Yahoo email, you could not email another person with an AOL email.
Exactly. People have forgotten that. But and AOL's version of the internet was completely self-contained. You come in here and you only stay in here, right?
look at how so look at the example of emails and how interconnected we are now with that. It
well,
doesn't
that blew
matter what
AOL's
email
model apart. They said, we're going to create a private space. Hospitals are like that. The medical community is like that. If I'm in the Kaiser network, I'm in the Kaiser network. But I want to go see Dr. Trin. Sorry, you're in the Kaiser network. Got a lot of great people, a lot of great buildings, but you're in the Kaiser network. Or if you're in workman's comp, we were doing a show on workman's comp on one of our shows. You buy a workman's comp plan for your company. I want to go see my doctor. No, you got to go see our doctor in the plan here. I know you love your doctor, but you've been hurt, and you got to play on our space now here. All these other places, Twitter and Facebook and stuff, they want you to stay there. When you go to the casinos in Vegas, they don't want you going from one casino to the next here. You stay in that space. So is this going to be proprietary? Come in, don't leave, or is this a solar system of planets? I can go from your planet to this planet pretty easily. What do you guys think? You go and
I think in the beginning, it's definitely, it's going to be siloed in the beginning, right? It's, that's just where it is because that's where the technology currently is because people are building on different platforms and different chains. But just like Dr. Trin said, it's an evolution. And as that evolution grows, things will become more interconnected. And I think one of the things that we've definitely talked about with MD is how do we make it so that we don't feel so siloed between our metaverse and their metaverse and how we port over a little more easy between the two. So, I think through collaborations, right, with our company and with MD we'll start seeing some of these evolutions sort of happen. But again, it's new technology and, we're still very early. We're just plugging along a lot faster than, others. And, we'll see where it lands.
Well, I hope I hope I live long enough to see all this come to fruition. It's happening so fast. It somehow seems so far away and so distant to me, like it's way off in the distant future. And yet it seems.
All right, guys, we are coming at 9:00.
Yes, got to go.
Take care. Thank you so much for coming on, Elizabeth, Hugo.
Absolutely.
We'll continue this chat.
Having it.
Thank you.
Oh, and give us a website. Where do they go find you?
Oh, it's HEKA, HEKA.xyz.
Okay. Didn't know there was an
Awesome.
XYZ extension. All right. See you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. There you have it, folks. One more great reason to tune into Health Talks right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.